This is the Dangerfield revenge match, the first opportunity Adelaide Crows fans have had to boo the traitor on their home deck. And it's all happening on a huge Friday night stage, with TV viewers sure to tune into this match of the round. But it's not just Dangerfield that the Crows will be worried about. Geelong is sitting 6-1 and have been in quite decent form, while Adelaide has struggled in the midfield throughout last week's away game against the Bulldogs. Tonight we'll be going through all the key matchups, the opposition game plan, and ways we think the Crows can defeat Geelong. I'm your host Scorpus, and this is the Crowcast Preview. Alright, we're in for a pretty big show tonight. We've got Phoenix on the cast as well as Mr. Mystery Guest. How you guys going?
Well, thanks, mate. How you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. I see that you're kind of slipping behind in the tips. You're a full 11 behind me. Hank's actually going up, and Mr. Mystery Guest, you're not doing too badly. I think those dubious tips aren't really going your way, Phoenix.
Well, it's one of those things, isn't it? Once you start trying to play catch-up, that's the end of it, really, isn't it?
Yeah, not doing too as bad as Big Fella. He's still on 30. I think he's well and truly cooked at this point in the season. And it's only 7 rounds in, too. And Mr. Mystery Guest, just getting a little bit of feedback from you, so hopefully maybe we can turn the mic down or something. Anyway, we'll go straight into the teams. We've just made one change. Mackay, he's out injured, will be out for the next 3 to 4 weeks. Coming in is Milera. For Geelong, they've brought out Lincoln McCarthy and Nakia Cockatoo. Both of them are injured. They've brought back Jed Buse and Corey Gregson. A couple of notable omissions. We've still got Laird out with the toe issue for 1 to 2 weeks. Mitch Clark for Geelong, he hasn't played a game this whole season. And of course, Thurlow for Geelong also out with an ACL. Last match was round 23, 2015. We'd kind of already got into the finals at this stage. And we went down to Gadinia Park and lost to Geelong by 39 points. Didn't really give a crap that match at all. Hawkins, Vardy and Josh Walker kicked 3. Johnson, who's now GWS, had 6 shots on goal. We had Selwood and Mackay, 34 touches each. Selwood had a lot of high frees as well, 5 frees, 4. It's craziness. We had Betts and Henderson performing quite well for us, 4 goals and 30 touches respectively. So, Phoenix, Miller is back in. Is this the right move?
I think it's a predictable move, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. It'll be interesting to see where we play them because obviously D-Max been playing predominantly through the midfield or on the wing, so and Miller has been playing more as a forward. So it'll be interesting to see how we shuffle around. But I don't mind saying Wayne in. I think it's a good in.
Yeah, I probably would have liked to see 1 or 2 extra changes from last week. I think that we were quite poor through the midfield, especially someone like Douglas. I think he was quite poor. I think you mentioned on the cast on Sunday. But I guess Don Pike has given our midfielders a chance to redeem themselves, to sort of try and win back those contested possessions and clearances that we got smashed in last week. So I'm not sure who we would have brought in if Douglas went out. So I guess it's kind of one of those things where we only really had Milera to come in. We'll be playing up against probably the tallest defence that we've played this whole year. Geelong matches up, I think, probably quite well on our forwards. They'll probably go Lonergan on Walker, Henderson on Jenkins, Taylor on Lynch, Jed Buse on Betts, Ruggles on Cameron, and maybe Mackay on McGovern. So that's a fairly decent matchups there. Do you think that their defence will get a hold of us, Mr. Mystery Guest?
Yeah, it's good. So, sorry. Good question. I'm a little bit more worried about it this week. Obviously, I think they match up a lot better on us than what the Bulldogs do. So maybe we can't just rely on that. We can't just rely on how good our forward line is, and we have to be able to do a lot better in the midfield. Enough ball in there.
Yeah, definitely. The midfield battle will be probably the thing that wins us or loses the game for us. They've got a really strong midfield. Bats really deep with Dangerfield, Selwood, Duncan, Caddy, Guthrie, Motwap on the wings. It's very, very strong. Of course, we can't forget Blissarves, or however you pronounce his name. I mean, he's tall, fast. He's a really good player for them. Phoenix midfield battle. We can't win this, can we?
Well, not on last week's form, no. We've got a youngish, I guess, core group of midfielders apart from... Well, we've got a two-dimensional midfield. We've got some senior players, and apart from Dougie, they've been going all right without setting the world on fire. And then we've got a couple of young lads that really need to pull their finger out, who also happen to be brothers. So,
Yep.
Look, they're a very established midfield. They're solid. Selwood has his technique, so I can't see us winning the midfield on last week's form, no.
One of the interesting things I think you mentioned just briefly there with Selwood's interesting moves, we kind of have a couple of players in our team with really poor tackling form. I think one of those would be Scotty Thompson. He just manages to get people high all the time. Don't know how it happens. He really needs to improve, and if he's going to be standing near Selwood at stoppages, he really can't concede those high frees, because it will really cost us, like it did against the Bulldogs last week, them getting fairly easy clearances straight out of the midfield from free kicks. It's just not going to work for us. I think our defence is probably the part we'll do quite well in as far as matchups are concerned. Hardigan has been in really fantastic form, and if he goes up against someone like Kirsten, I think Hardigan might put on his best performance ever. Talia's done quite well against Hawkins in the past, although he's been struggling a little bit with our sort of different defensive structure this year. And I think there's not too many players they have that would be on the smaller end of the height scale that would trouble us, although Menzel's been in reasonable form for them. Mr. Guest, do you think that one of their tall guys will kick a bag, or do you reckon the smalls will still be damaging as they have been against us all year?
No, I think the smalls will be the main concern for me. You made a good point about Talia. I think it might have been you during the week as well. You said that we should look at keeping Talia as sort of just having one main opponent and let other guys do more of the team defense stuff. I actually thought that that's sort of what we tried to do against Port, because it seemed he got one out with Dixon a lot, and then we just had other guys like Lever take intercept marks when he could. So I wouldn't mind seeing that against Talia, just playing more on Hawkins rather than worrying about the team defense setup.
Yeah, you're right. I think, well, Pike's obviously got his plan, and he thinks that it's the best idea to sort of rotate the defenders across, all the different players in the forward line. But for me, I agree with you. I think Talia's biggest strengths is on those one-on-one contests when he can, a week out, start preparing against his one opponent. That's what got him into All-Australian form. That's where we've seen him play his best football. Whether or not we can sort of shift our structure slightly to get that back into place and, as you said, let the other guys rotate through, I think that would be a good idea. That said, I wouldn't mind Talia to keep improving his attacking form. I think there's been times where he's been probably so defensive that he's just, reducing the amount of players we have on the field, and I don't really rate his field kick at all. I think, Phoenix, you'd agree with me here that a lot of his kicks out of the back line last week were just shockers. So... yeah,
horrendous.
He's try and get the ball into someone else's hands when he's got it. But yeah, I think those small guys could trouble us. Do you see the same? Do you reckon there'll be a danger? One of their small forwards, maybe Gregson, Lang, getting off the chain, Phoenix?
Look, I don't know so much. Gregson hasn't played a huge amount this season, has he? I don't think.
No, I think he's not much at all. He's been brought in this week, of course.
Yeah. No, look, I actually think we've got their forward line relatively covered, but it'll be a matter of supply. I mean, the Bulldogs forward line got on top of us last week, basically on the back of huge amounts of supply, and I think that's going to be the issue again this week. If we allow them too many inside 50s, then just law of averages is going to suggest they're going to outscore us.
Yeah, I mean, that was a easily the biggest issue last week is the amount of inside 50s we've been conceding. We've been conceding so many inside 50s this year already. Even though in some of our wins we've managed to get that slingshot football going against Port Adelaide, we beat them by, 50-odd points, yet we conceded inside 50s, I think 70 inside 50s against Port, yet we still smashed them. But against the high quality teams like Geelong, like Western Bulldogs, like Hawthorn, we simply can't let that sort of game plan happen. And I think the one thing that is probably the most obvious thing about this match is that Geelong's huge strength is in the clearances, and that is our number one weakness since Dangerfield has left. We can't really beat the strong clearance teams at the moment. We saw it against Western Bulldogs, and if they can get on top in the midfield through the clearances, they will probably slaughter us. And I think that is going to be the biggest issue. Phoenix, do you reckon this sort of the similar thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Sauce's performance this week is going to be critical. He's been down. He looks okay around the grounds, but in the centre work, he looks average at best at the moment. And if we can't get first use of it, I don't see us kicking a winning score, to be honest. Particularly given the weather's going to be pretty average over here this weekend or tomorrow night. So it's going to be a lot of stoppages.
Yeah, we kind of don't want to get stoppages when we're facing a team like Geelong. I mean, the one way that we could defeat them, it's probably the easiest way straight out of the bat, is do what GWS did and simply destroy them at the clearances. They had, I think it was plus 13 or 14 in their match, which was Geelong's only loss, and they just easily got it into their forward line where they were easily outgunning Geelong in terms of one-on-one matchups. But the fact that we're not nearly as strong of a clearance team as GWS means that we're going to have to probably revert to a secondary tactic to win this game. And for me, that would be our rebound from defence. One thing that I was looking at all the stats throughout the past few rounds, that Geelong aren't a very good rebounding team, so they're not very good at rebounding out of our forward line, and also they don't rebound all that. They don't allow another team. Well, they allow another team to rebound a lot. Sorry, this is very confusing how I've written it here in my notes. They're not very good at rebounding, and they let the opposition team rebound quite effectively. So for us, that's one of the strengths that we've been able to achieve this season, is our really strong rebound. So if we can really, harness that weakness of Geelong, we could go a long way. Mr. Mystery Guest, do you reckon that our outside speed will be the biggest weapon for us and the biggest way that we'll be able to win this game?
Well, it pretty much has to be, because on our current form on the inside in the midfield, we just can't match them. So if we're going to win, then it has to be done on the outside, has to be done through rebound.
And we've of course got an extra sort of speedy player in Milera. Mackay's been playing a fair bit on the inside throughout the matches, and I'm not sure that's the best role for him, whereas Milera, with his precision kicking on the outside and a lot of the creative stuff that he does, will really strengthen our biggest strength in this game. Geelong, not the fastest team either. They have a lot of, interestingly, perhaps, they have a lot of above average, I'd probably say, inside midfielders in terms of speed. Dangerfield, Caddy and Duncan are all pretty speedy, and some of their taller guys like Blissarves and Stanley, they're not slow for 200 centimetre players either, which I guess allows them to sort of not have, to maybe have more inside midfielders in their team overall. But yeah, speed's going to be huge for them. What about turnovers, Phoenix? Do you reckon that we'll be able to execute those turnovers that have been able to see us those wins earlier in the season?
Well, we've been playing all year very concentrated off half-back. Each week the heat map shows us dominating, or our possession counts largely being centred around the half-back line. So it's more than just a coincidence that that's where we seem to be applying the most pressure. I don't think we can actually afford to play that tactic this week. I think I spoke on Sunday to myself about teams not committing as many players forward now, and it's our. I'd love to see the rebound inside 50 stat, like the secondary inside 50 stat that the Bulldogs had last week. because we just don't seem to be clearing the wings on our outlets anymore. So I don't. If we're going to sit back and play rebound footy, particularly in the wet, I don't think we're going to kick a winning score. We have to move the ball forward. We have to play the ball more play the game more in our half of the ground. Otherwise, our defence is just going to be under too much pressure. They've got too much talent to allow us to keep them to a losing score.
Yeah, it's really interesting you say that we haven't been able to achieve that sort of precision rebound that we've been known for, I guess, in the first couple of rounds, especially against Freo and the Bulldogs. There was a lot of long kicking to just really horrible contests, kind of halfway through the midfield zone. And that's where both Fremantle and the Bulldogs were placing a lot of their players. And just looking at the way Geelong plays, they also do a very similar thing where they put probably a very strong zone throughout the midfield. They don't really have that high press in their forward line or back line or anything like that. They just try and win those contests in the midfield. So for us, we need to kind of switch from doing the Smith or Seedsman bailout kick, trying to get it as long down the ground as possible, and revert to what we were doing perhaps against like a Port Adelaide, where we were handballing, we were doing shorter kicks, and that allows us to move slightly further up the ground, and that then can allow that outlet kick straight over the top of their zone into a forward 50. But as you said, if we're conceding too many really deep, defensive 50 entries, then it's going to be really hard for us to sort of execute that game plan, and they will probably be able to lock it in. So we need to be able to start winning the ball in our forward half of the ground, which is really where we haven't been able to do it in the past, and it's probably going to be another big issue for us on the weekend. Couple of other things. Do you think, Mr. Mystery Guest, that if we get into the forward line, that we will really be able to pile on a huge score? Do you reckon that's going to be our best shot?
Well, I think if you look at the Bulldogs game, the reason we were able to still kick a really high score with so few inside 50s was because once we did get, I guess, past that zone, we got it in quickly and we got it over the back. And so when we do that, we scored fairly accurately as well, which helps. Once we're able to do that, we score really well.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that too, because Geelong concedes a lot of inside 50s into dangerous positions, sort of in that scoreable corridor zone. So, yeah, I guess if we can get in there, do you reckon we'll be in with a chance?
I think if we're going to do it more of it has to come from the centre as well. That can help, but at the same time, when you get that quick rebound, it's almost impossible. If you do it really well, as we have done at times, then it's almost impossible to stop. And it makes it really easy to score then, where if you've got, say, an extra player, the team has put a player behind the ball, a bit like Richmond did when we played them, and we got a few 4 or 5 clearances in a row, and their extra man just kept marking it, was able to take it out. So it's not just about just getting it in there as much as possible. We still need to use it well. And so I think if it's just about pure numbers, I reckon won't be as efficient as we were last week, but we should still kick a high score, but we need to be able to use it well as well.
Yeah, we can't go, kicking 120 points only for Geelong to kick 140 points. We need to balance our precision inside 50s and our, strong performance in that end of the ground with good defence. And yeah, I think that'll be a big issue for us. Phoenix, what about this other interesting stat that I was looking up? And that is that Geelong is probably number one in the competition for marks inside 50, and that's a big scoring zone for them. Do we have the defenders to sort of nullify that scoring source for them?
Look, I would have said yes unequivocally until last weekend. We've played this strategy where we've been multiple up at a contest in defensive 50, third man up, killing the contest over the back. And yet against the Western Bulldogs, they seem to be able to isolate their forwards one-on-one with us, and it gave us problems. I noticed it was either really good strategic work by the Bulldogs, or we've changed our strategy somewhat. I didn't see anywhere near as much of Cheney and Lever killing contests over the back. We saw Talia at some stages getting outmarked in particular, and Hartigan was often one-on-one as well. So, again, wet night, it's difficult to see that it's going to be a game one in the air so much. But it will be interesting to see whether that was just a bit of an anomaly last week and we go back to our 2 or 3 man up at the marking contest, or whether we have changed our plans there. If we're one-on-one, I think we're vulnerable. Tarley is down at the moment. Hartigan's playing well. Hartigan's playing well, but Tarley is down. And I guess they have enough firepower up forward to make us want to be one-on-one accountable, which is, I think, what the problem was with the Bulldogs last week. So it'll be interesting, but I don't think the game's going to be one in the air this week, simply because of the weather.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned it was raining. I mean, I didn't really realise that, but that kind of changes the tactics that we'll have to go into, and it could in fact be our first wet weather game of the year. I have another question for you, Phoenix. There's one player in particular that I think he had an almost game last week, and that is our captain, Taylor Walker. Do you reckon this will be really the turning of form for him? Do you reckon he can get back into form and sort of kick a bag for probably the first time this season against Geelong?
No, I don't think this week's going to be it. I don't think the weather is actually going to suit him this week. If he had trouble sticking him under the roof last week, he's certainly going to have a bit of trouble this week. I think I read somewhere that Teague has come out and said he's still not 100% fit.
Oh, shame.
I think that's a real concern. I understand he's our captain and he's a focal point and he takes a good defender. But I just have this issue of playing unfit players, and I would rather see them change it up a little bit and try something else up forward rather than playing Tex half fit. I don't think the conditions are going to suit him. I think we'll probably see him playing fairly high up the ground and providing an outlet target. But I expect to see Jenkins playing deep, as we've seen him for large parts of the last couple of weeks, and being our main focal point. And that's going to be a challenge for Jenkins, because I think Geelong are going to see him as our main focal point, and they're going to concentrate on him, which will be a new experience for him.
Yeah, I mean, Jenkins kicking 8 last week is going to, like you said, put a lot more attention on him. Hopefully one of the guys like McGovern, who I think was probably a bit down last week, will be able to take that role and maybe kick a few more goals than he's been kicking the past couple of weeks. And of course, Lynch has also been very dangerous, and I think he'll be a difficult matchup for Geelong with his aerobic capacity, getting up the ground and not necessarily being the strongest player overhead, which will probably suit his. If it's wet weather, it'll probably suit him a little bit better. So I guess this kind of wraps up our look at the match. It'll be a tight one, Mr. Mystery Guest. Who do you see winning, and who do you think will be best on for us? Or Geelong, maybe.
Sorry, I wanted to cut in. I just remembered something. I'm not actually sure it will be that wet tomorrow night. From what I've heard, it sounds like it actually be pretty dry. But I'm not sure on that.
It's going to have to turn around pretty quickly, mate. Look, we've had a week.
I know it's been wet during the week, but apparently there won't be much rain tomorrow night, though.
Yeah, I've just got the forecast here, so I can sort of have a look at what's going on in Adelaide at the moment. The forecast for tomorrow is 22 degrees and mostly sunny. So they don't seem to be giving much chance of rain. In fact, they've listed it 0% chance of rain. So we'll see what's going on there. I guess there was a 70% chance of rain today. So was it raining over there, guys, at the moment?
Yes. Raining right now where I'm. Look, even if it is sunny, it's still going to. Adelaide Oval has taken a lot of water this week, so it's not going to play like a dry weather game. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Will that be the difference? Phoenix, are you tipping Geelong this week?
Yeah, I am. I don't think I have some real concerns over our midfield strength. I think we were terribly exposed on the weekend, and I think the midfield again is probably Geelong's strength. And there's going to have to be a major form reversal for us to compete at the coalface with them. And if we lose the coalface, we lose the match.
What about you, MMG? Do you see it the same?
Yeah, probably. I was just thinking, Yeah, I was a couple of weeks ago. I was thinking we were a pretty good chance in this game, but over the last 3 weeks, we've been smashed in centre clearances, and if that happens again, then we're in big trouble. So I'll say Geelong by 4 goals. I'd say probably Dangerfield, but Sloan does like playing in wet weather football. So maybe if he has a big game, we can get over the line.
Yeah, interesting. I'm going to tip Adelaide, and I'm not. This isn't a confident tip, so it'll be
Because you're bitter and twisted.
pretty small margin. Yeah, well, you'll see. I mean, I don't really want to have Dangerfield as best on ground. That would be a travesty. So I'm going to probably tip someone like Sloan just for the sake of it. But I think that there's a few reasons why I'll be tipping Adelaide, and that is that we're playing at Adelaide Oval, which is our home ground. The times that we've looked poor were probably the Hawks game and the Western Bulldogs game, not being able to get over the line in a close one. So I expect this to be a close one. The fact that it's at Adelaide Oval could come into an advantage for us. We might be able to get over the line. I also, just looking at some of the responses from the players after last week's game, they looked angry that they lost that match, and I think they were coming out absolutely breathing fire. Home game, packed stadium, Dangerfield's back, and I think that we'll see that reversal in form. I'm not confident in that one, but we might see it happen. And the other thing that I think is kind of interesting is that our midfield has the ability to switch on its contested and clearance ability for some reason. So some weeks it's really poor and some weeks it's really good. And I just have the feeling that this week, if we can come out breathing fire, that we will have the ability to win the clearances and maybe surprise Dangerfield and the Geelong Cats there. But again, not a confident tip, and maybe you two will get a leg up on me in the tipping there. But it'll certainly be an interesting one. No SNFL game this week. We've got a bye, so bad luck for guys like Menzel who are trying to break into the team. And the other matches of this round, I mean, it's really not that exciting. Geelong versus Adelaide is the game of the round by far. I mean, the next best game that I'll probably be tuning in for is Melbourne versus the Bulldogs on Sunday Arvo at the MCG. Bulldogs' first game away from Etihad. Phoenix, do you think that Melbourne will be able to win this? I mean, this is something I probably wouldn't have been saying the past couple of seasons, but I reckon they're in with a shot.
Well, the fact that Western Bulldogs had absolutely everything going for them last weekend and only just got over the line against us in the last 5 minutes or so tells me that they're not in great nick, and Melbourne travelling pretty well. So I'm going to tip the Bulldogs, but not with any confidence. I think Melbourne are in with a real shot and could be above us on the table by the end of the round.
Oh, not Melbourne above us. That would be disappointing to see. Mr. Mystery Guest, what about the MCG factor? Is that a big issue?
I reckon it might be. The Bulldogs haven't been tested at all so far this year outside of Etihad, and they struggled at times at the MCG. I wonder
most notably the elimination final.
Yeah. I wonder how much, if they internally, how much they built up our game, and whether sort of the following week they might take a little bit out of them, like how sometimes don't perform our best the week after a showdown. So I wonder if that might have an effect well. So just for fun, I'll say Melbourne.
Yeah. I'm hoping to see Melbourne get up. I think it'd be nice to put Luke Beveridge a bit down on his certain cockwombleness over the past couple of days, at least against Adelaide. The other game that I'll probably be tuning in for is Carlton versus Port Adelaide, purely because as Adelaide supporters, we love to see these danger matches. It's at Etihad, which is kind of interesting. So Port's having to travel to face Carlton. At the start of the season, I would have penciled this in as a certain win for Port Adelaide, but the fact that Carlton's actually been travelling a bit better than I was expected could make it a close game, especially considering Carlton managed to defeat Port last year. How do you see it happening, Phoenix?
Well, first of all, I want to know what Mr. Mystery Guest is watching on the TV.
Sounds good. Hang on, I just muted him, I think. Oh, he's muting himself.
There you go. Who was it? Port and
Carlton, yeah.
Port Carlton, yeah.
Not MasterChef.
Damn it. Look, I reckon Carlton will get up on this one. They're playing a good style of football, and whilst they're light on personnel in terms of talent, they've got enough talent there. I don't think Port are travelling all that well. I mean, they shook off Brisbane pretty comfortably, but it's a pretty tough trip for Brisbane to come down to Adelaide at the best of times. So I'm tipping Carlton in a close one.
Ooh, I think the Port Adelaide supporters will be furious if they manage to lose this one against Carlton. But I agree, actually. I think that the one thing that Carlton has this season that they didn't have last season was belief. I think they have actual belief in their game plan at the moment, and they think that they actually have a shot to win, despite the fact that their personnel isn't, particularly great, especially in their forward line. But, I mean, the fact that it's a home game for Carlton, I reckon this will be a real danger match for Port Adelaide. Mr. Guest, are you also tipping Carlton, or are you going for the pair?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I think it might come down to how the teams approach it. Especially from Port's point of view, if they see this as a danger match and they actually have to go hard, and they've talked up how they're building up again after beating a couple of minnows, how hard they go into the game. Because I think I can see Carlton definitely using their form over the last couple of weeks and see this as another game where they can try and build. If Port just sort of go in expecting another to smash them, because I think Carlton are going then what Brisbane or Essendon are. So it could be close. On the inside, you would think Carlton get the jump, but I'm just going to say Port. They might just be too classy, I guess, Carlton.
Yeah, there's always a chance that they could turn around their form, I guess. Any other games this week that are sort of interesting? I mean, there's nothing that I can really see. Essendon, North Melbourne, Hawthorn, Freo, GWS Gold Coast, Brisbane Lions, Collingwood, Richmond, Sydney, and West Coast St Kilda are the other matches. I think they're fairly one-sided affairs mostly. Anything else you wanted to bring up, Phoenix?
No, mate, it's a pretty uninspiring round of footy. Interesting that Freo announced today that Fife is definitely ruled out for the rest of the season, so you would imagine that Hawthorn will give them a nice old touch-up. But no, not really. The main point of interest, I think, out of the round will, and I meant to mention this earlier in the Western Bulldogs chat, is to see what sort of free kick count they get this week.
Yeah,
whether there'll be an overcorrection or not.
Well, they don't have Mr. Troy Pennell at their disposal anymore. He's actually umpiring that Hawthorn Freo game, I think. So he hasn't been dropped, which is definitely annoying me a little bit after his shocker of a performance last week. But yeah, without the umpires at their back, and I think one thing I read on the board just recently was that it seemed someone mentioned that internally at the AFL they weren't as happy with the way that players are playing for high free kicks at the moment, and teams like the Western Bulldogs have a lot of those little shitty players that like to get low and duck and drop at the knees, do all that. So if they're tightening up, if that's the AFL's rule of the week this week, then Western Bulldogs and some players from Hawthorn as well might be in a bit of trouble with their
and Geelong.
And Geelong with Selwood. Maybe they'll finally stop awarding Selwood free kicks. But
no, it'll be after Friday night.
Yeah, it'll be next week, just after Adelaide's played them. It's always the way.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, I think that brings us to the end of our little Crowcast preview, looking at the Geelong game. Should be a cracker of a game on Friday night. Hopefully everyone tunes in. And it's on HD on Channel 7 finally. So
amazing.
Finally switched it on. I mean, it's taken them long enough. But yeah, for those of us without Foxtel, you'll finally get to actually be able to see the players, and you'll be able to see the ball for once, which will be great. You can follow us on Twitter, BF Crowcast, Facebook, BF Crowcast. Follow us on all those places. You get notifications when we're going live and all that. And of course, don't forget to review us on iTunes, 5 stars, all that. Has anyone reviewed us yet, Phoenix? Have you been keeping track?
I haven't seen anyone do it in the last couple of days that I've looked, so we might have to give a prize for the first review, I think. A night out on the piss with us or something like that, I don't know.
Yeah, it's really slack. Come on, guys, get reviewing us. Give us the 5 stars. We'll hand out those imaginary T-shirts from a couple of casts back. We'll be
They're
back.
not
live.
imaginary; they're philosophical.
Philosophical. Yep. Huge difference. We'll be back.
Shut up.
We'll be back next week. Live Thursday, 7:30 Adelaide time, and Phoenix, you'll be hosting the Sunday review cast. It'll be a couple of days after our match, but I'm sure there'll be lots to talk about. That's live 7 p.m. And yeah, check out the cast this week, Tuesday Night Live. I thought it was a pretty good one. We got American Crow on there again, and Mackay as the guest from the Big Footy boards. Very interesting chat there. So yeah, check that out, and we'll be back next week. Thanks everyone for tuning in.
Beautiful. I think Mackay will be on with me and Nikki on Sunday night too, so that'll be fun. Thanks, mate.
Oh, that'll be a good one. Yeah, tune in for that one, and yeah, catch you guys later.